From the spirit of the Northwest, KATU Nighcast. The news starts now.
I don't plan on losing my job. I plan on telling the American people that I've got a plan to win the war on terror.
President Bush comes to the defense of his administration tonight. Despite a bloody month in Iraq, the president says the United States will finish the work of those who have died in the line of duty. But tonight, a family with a loved one in Iraq is very concerned.
So I'd just like to know how are we going to get out of this?
Good evening. Glad you're with us, everybody. I'm Steve Dunn.
And I'm Deborah Knapp. It is the first news conference from the president since the war started in Iraq. Tonight, President Bush spoke directly to the American people on what still needs to be accomplished. Despite a deadly month for American soldiers in Iraq, the president spent the first 20 minutes centered on the continuing work needed in that country and the desire to finish the work of the fallen.
Troop strength now and in the future is determined by the situation on the ground. If additional forces are needed, I will send them.
The president also focused on the transfer of sovereignty back to the Iraqis.
We have set a deadline of June 30th. It is important that we meet that deadline. As a proud and independent people, Iraqis do not support an indefinite occupation.
President Bush faced a myriad of questions stretching far beyond Iraq. After all, it is an election year, and polls show his support slipping.
I don't plan on losing my job. I plan on telling the American people that I've got a plan to win the war on terror. And I believe they'll stay with me.
The now famous memo given to President Bush the month before the 9/11 attacks, entitled "Bin Laden Determined to Attack Within the United States," was a hot topic. The president's response: nothing could have prevented the attack. The U.S. was not on a war footing.
That had I had any inkling whatsoever that the people were going to fly airplanes into buildings, we would have moved heaven and earth to save the country. Just like we're working hard to prevent a further attack.
Not wanting to admit failure, the president was caught a bit off guard with this question.
After 9/11, what would your biggest mistake be, would you say, and what lessons have you learned from it?
I wish you'd have given me this written question ahead of time so I could plan for it.
He never quite came around to answering it, choosing his words carefully and opting to promote what he sees as his strength.
And the world has learned this. When I say something, I mean it. And the credibility of the United States is incredibly important for keeping world peace and freedom. Thank you.
The president also managed to avert a couple of questions on whether he wanted to apologize or take any responsibility for the September 11th attacks. Instead, he reiterated it was Osama bin Laden who was responsible.
And tonight, families with loved ones serving in Iraq and families whose loved ones never came home watched the president's speech, hoping for some answers. KATU's Shelley Bailey-Shaw watched along with him. She joins us live with more. Shelley.
Steve, the families I talked to tonight want to know, when is my soldier coming home? And for those family whose soldier isn't coming home, how will the president ensure that he didn't die in vain?
Iraqi officials will assume full responsibility for the ministries of government.
It's like we've gone backwards, though. We're in worse shape than we were a year ago.
Cynthia Elliott wishes President Bush could hear what she has to say. Her son, Staff Sergeant Casey Vantras, is stationed in Mosul.
I mean, I support our troops 110%, but I don't think we should be there. And I think we're in over our head.
And nothing the president said tonight changed her or her husband's mind.
And what are we going to do? We've got to stay. We can't back out. Then they'll win. But why is it up to us to police the world?
Maria and Michael Bushko wonder too.
His orders come from far away no more.
Tonight, they stood with veterans strongly opposed to the war to honor their son, William Ramirez. He died 2 months ago on patrol in Baghdad. His parents think President Bush has been too soft.
He's trying to, waffle his way, appease one side, appease another side.
That he means business, not just to fiddle around. I mean, we're losing a lot of lives that way.
Now is the time. And Iraq is the place.
But there's one thing these parents and the president agree on.
A desperate enemy is also a dangerous enemy. And our work may become more difficult before it is finished.
Yeah, that's the hard part. We don't know what we're fighting. We don't know who our enemy is over there.
So how do you go to sleep at night?
I pray.
The president also promised tonight that troops would have everything they needed, but the Elliots say they haven't seen that yet. They say their son has had to use his own money to buy supplies like flashlights and knee pads off the internet and then have them shipped to Iraq. So it would seem that the president has still a lot of convincing to do, at least when it comes to these families.
A lot of frustration for the families just sitting here waiting.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Shelley.
Thanks, Shelley. The violence in Iraq has taken another deadly toll on American lives. Late word tonight, 4 U.S. Marines have been killed. This comes after a grisly discovery just hours ago. 4 bodies were found near Baghdad. 7 American civilians and 2 U.S. soldiers went missing last Friday after their fuel convoy was attacked. Today, the bodies were recovered near the site of the ambush. A State Department official tells ABC News family members of the 7 contractors were notified. The company says it cannot confirm the bodies are those of its employees.
We have some other news to tell you about. Clark County's unemployment rate is 2.5 points higher than the national average, but they'll take it. KATU's Paul Bukta tells us why.
Drive down Clark County streets and you'll find old homes selling for $260,000. You'll see new construction all over the place. And now this, news on the job front. In March 2003, unemployment here ran as high as 10.2%. But last March, the jobless rate came in at just 7.4%. Leading economists to conclude things are getting a lot better. Just not for Russ Hamilton.
Whenever I need money, I bring it here.
Who we found getting his bike out of Hawk.
Give me a measly $50 for a $400 bike. $50 is better than nothing. Having to pay water, garbage. Just can't. I got a roommate that is trying to find full-time work and ain't working.